I've been progressively taking off the old undercoat and putting a vinegar wrap on this. As I've been going along, I've found a few little dents, so it's something I'm going to have to address at some stage, but there's not too many. I've got up to the rear end of the bonnet here. I've just finished sanding this back, trying to get as much of the undercoat off as I can. There's still a little bit left, but it's probably enough now to put a vinegar wrap on this end. So that's what I'm about to do. It might take a couple of goes to get some of the surface rust off, I'm not too sure. But what I've been finding on this as well is the louvers on this side are slightly misshapen. Something's been laid across the top about halfway along, and they're sort of dished in there. So that's something I'm going to have to address, certainly not at the moment, but at some stage. This side is not too bad. Most of that's straight. There's just a couple that are dished. So if anyone's had this problem before, and I'm sure people have, any advice on how to address that, how to take those misshapes out without causing further damage. So I just appreciate some advice on that if anyone has been through that process. I've got a fair idea of how I might do it, but I'd like to find out how other people have addressed that, so I don't make the same mistakes that others have. But if not, I'll proceed and learn by my own mistakes. This is a messy and slow job to do. I've had the vinegar wrap on for 6 days, so it's been a little bit hard to get the wrap into the louvers, but I've just taken it off today to see how it's going. So I'll clean this off as best I can. A fair bit of undercoat still left there. I thought I'd rubbed all that off, but I couldn't tell the difference between undercoat and surface rust. So it still may come off, but I'll just clean this surface off on this side while I'm just assessing how much it's taken off. It may take another wrap for a few more days, but I'm not sure. But I'll just clean this off and see how it goes. You can see there's a fair amount of rust in the paper there, so it has taken rust off. Bearing in mind that was pure white paper, so it is working. The difficulty is at the moment it's winter here, so the temperatures have been dropping down to, well, not cold in terms of other places around the world, but down to about 0. So the vinegar doesn't work quite as well in the colder weather, but it certainly still does some work on there. This side cleaned up better than I thought. Still a bit of paint left on it. I've got to scrub that off. I'll wait till this dries off. I've just cleaned it off with vinegar and a wire brush, then wiped it down with a wet cloth, so the surface rust will start to come back. So that's to be expected, because I haven't killed any of the surface with acid yet. But I'll let that dry off, and then I'll go over it with some sandpaper, clean up the remaining bits of undercoat, and scuff up any areas of rust that are still remaining. There's not a lot of that, a little bit along the side here, and some in the louvers there. Louvers came up a little bit better than I thought, but they still need a bit more work. Maybe that will come out with sandpaper, but I'll wait and see. So I'll let that dry off, and I'll go on the other side and just clean all that off as well. A bit better than I thought. This side's cleaned up better than the other. Still some patches of undercoat left, a couple of areas of rust that need to be just rubbed back a bit more. The vents have gone a little bit better on this side, but still, once again, I need to go around with a bit of sandpaper and rub areas back. This one actually didn't clean as good as I was hoping, just in this area, but all in all, for the first wrap, that's been pretty good. The next process now is after this all dries off, I'll go over it with some paper and clean off, I'd say about 99% of the paint, and so there won't be a lot to put vinegar on, so it'll be a bit of a patchwork. Certainly the vents I'll cover those with paper and put vinegar on them again, just to make sure everything's cleaned off. But the other parts of the panel, there's not a lot that I think that will remain after I rub it back. Now I've cleaned everything up as best I can. It's come up quite good. What I'm now going to do is to put another vinegar wrap on, just to pick up some of the smaller pieces that are a little bit deep in terms of shallow rust pits where there's just the remnants of small bits of rust in there. Rather than sort of put patches all over this with vinegar on it, I'm just going to wrap the whole lot. Won't take many days to do. I normally do 6 days, but on this case I'll probably do no more than 3 or 4. So I'll put a wrap over the top, and that should clean all of this, all the small sections back, and bring it back to bare metal. Vinegar just takes a little bit longer to work in the winter, so I've actually put the vinegar wrap on this twice to get the surface to what it is now, which is pretty good. I'm not really complaining about it, but as I say, it just takes a bit longer, and there's a few areas where there are just slight pits where there might be a little bit of rust in them that needs to be taken out, but as I say, I'll do that later. So what I'm going to do now is to actually turn this over and do the inside of the bonnet, which is going to be a lot harder, mainly because of the the gunk it has on it. So it's got a combination of probably surface rust, grease, oil, paint, who knows what. So I'll start it by scraping it, then I'll probably use a paint stripper where there's paint, and then finally I'll do the vinegar. But it's going to take a lot longer than this side, but anyway, you've got to start somewhere. I'd like to say I flipped this over on my own, but I didn't. It's not heavy, but a little bit awkward with the size. Got my grandson to help me flip it. It's now sitting in the cradle at the front and rear. The condition in here, it's just different surfaces. So it's got, looks like undercoat and some form of stone chip there. Appears to be the original British racing green there. It certainly is there. And on the other side, and on here, I have no idea what it is. It's certainly not the paint. Whether it's just grime all over the paint, I won't know till I start to scrape that off. I would assume there is paint under that, the original green, but till I start taking it off I won't know. Probably start up this end because it's easier to just sit at the end of the bonnet and scrape away, but there's a lot to do on this to clean it up before I can even get the vinegar on. But with a lot of elbow grease I've been able to get this tar-like compound off. It's not that difficult, a little bit of heat with a heat gun, but not too much, and managed to get it off. I've taken the flanges off, they've come off alright, and underneath the main part was the original colour, the original British ration green. So it's all in, as you can see, basically in the centre of the panel, and on the sides it was just undercoat, the original undercoat there, and some form of stone chip. So that's the sum total of what was on there. What I'm now about to do is to go over this with some stripper. Once again, because of the coolness of the weather, it's going to be a little bit difficult for that to work, but I'm hoping it'll soften it enough to be able to scrape at least some of the colour off. Once I get the colour off, I shouldn't have too much difficulty sanding back the undercoat, because that's a very thin coat. So anyway, I'll see how it goes, but I'm mildly confident I can get most of that colour off. Just may take a few applications of the stripper. I've had paint stripper on this section. It's certainly removed most of the original colour. It's back to undercoat, and even that is fairly thin. I'll wait until I've got it all off to decide whether I need to go any more stripper. I've got a feeling that a lot of that will come off with sanding, so I'll wait until I've got the rest of this stuff off. I've just put more of the stripper on there. It being a bit cooler, it just takes a bit longer to soften the paint, but I'm hoping it will remove that. So I haven't got too much more to go, just a bit up around the front. That looks very, very thin in terms of paint, all in that front section, so it won't be as hard to get off as this, which is a lot thicker. But anyway, it's going quite well. I can get this paint off with sandpaper. I started using a sanding disc, but I think it leaves scratches that I really don't want on the panel. So I've been using just the paper there by hand. I've talked about the cold weather affecting both vinegar and paint stripper, but the cold weather also affects arthritis in the fingers. So as I've been trying to rub these, it gets very painful on the fingers trying to get the paint out of the louvers. But anyway, I'll keep going. It's just going to take a lot longer, but that's just the way it is. I'm not worried about that. I'll chip away at it a little bit each day and get that done. So it's just slowing me down quite a lot, but hopefully it will come off as good as that has. That won't need any vinegar wrap. There's a few areas, this is where the flanges were, so there's a bit of rust under those, so there's a few patches that I'll have to de-rust. These will be fine once I get all of the paint off. There's still a little smidgen of undercoat left, but that's just elbow grease, so that will come off, and then I'll just kill that with acid. Anyway, I'll just keep going. just want a bit of a rest at the moment because the fingers are a bit sore. I've finally managed to get the undercoat and paint off, or certainly most of it. There's still some touches of undercoat mixed in amongst the double colour on the steel there. Few areas of rust where the flanges were, and on this side, so it will have to be have the vinegar treatment, which I'm about to do. I've just got the paper towel in the vents. They are mostly got remnants of undercoat, some little spots of rust, but anyway, I've decided to do the whole surface with vinegar. It will help get the remaining undercoat off anyway, and any rust that's there will lift that as well. At this stage I'm thinking of doing the whole bonnet, the whole underside, which is quite a surface area to do. I'll see how I go. It's going to take a lot of paper towel and a lot of vinegar and wrap, but I'll start up this end anyway and see how I go. If I get sick of it, I'll stop halfway and then do it in 2 segments, but it's at least cleaned off. I can start to see where there are little dents and so on, quite a few around the nose there, up under the curved section. I don't think that's uncommon. Be lucky if you've got one that doesn't have any dents. And one thing I noticed, I'll just go down the other end, when I cleaned the undercoat off, there's actually some writing. I don't know whether you can see that. I've got no idea what it is. It was actually under the undercoat. I thought it might have been some notation about a repair, but there's no repair where that particular mark is. Surprisingly enough, it didn't come off when I was rubbing it with sandpaper, so it's an unusual mark. I say I can't quite read it. I assume it's something 9. It looks like a G. It may be a P. I'm not sure what the first letter is. But yes, it didn't rub off with sandpaper. So if anyone knows what that might be, it's just of interest, whether it was something done at the factory. As I say, I don't think it was done with subsequent repairs, because it was actually under the original undercoat. So anyway, a bit intriguing, so someone might know. Anyway, I'll get on with it and I'll start covering this up and put the vinegar on. Over the next 3 months, as well as restoring 2 cars, I've got to spend a lot more time cutting back in the gardens I've got here. Of course, the gardens here, probably including out the front of the house and the rear, probably over half an acre and maybe 3/4 of an acre of gardens. And of course, I also my land also goes into natural bushland, so that's it's coming down the back here. It goes down into the valley, to the bottom of the valley, which is all of those trees you can see on the video. They're all part of what's on my land. Now, the reason I've got to spend a fair bit of time over the next few months is that we've been warned that the bushfire season this year could be a bit of a problem, and the reason for that is over the last few years we've had a lot of unseasonal rain, and the growth has been enormous within both the natural bushland and also within the gardens that I've got here. The time, of course, to thin that out is in winter, leading into spring, but beyond that the temperatures will rise and the risk of fires increase. So what I have to do is get into, initially, in the areas that are all planted out, I've got to get in here and reduce the growth. As I say, it's gone wild. Things have choked plants out and so on. It's also a good time to get into things like wisteria, which is this. It gets out of control and goes up into places where it really shouldn't be, so it's better to get that when there's no leaf matter on the vines, so I can pull it out of the trees and so on. As I say, it has to be done. I'd prefer to be restoring cars, but it's better to prepare the property for the likelihood of fire rather than ignore it. You can see I've already started to thin things out. There's lots of vines and other growth that I've just thrown back onto the lawn, but even with what I've taken out so far, it's nowhere near enough. A lot more to be done. So there's pockets of garden in all sorts of places. There's gardens in here which are all overgrown. I've got to get in there and thin that out. The other thing I'm finding, of course, in the garden are sticks out of the trees. This time of year the wind picks up and there's a lot of trees around, of course, and trees both drop leaves. You can see leaves all over the ground, and they drop sticks, so I've got a lot of dead timber to collect all through the gardens. And also those bags there, feed bags, I use those to put all the leaf matter in, so they're all full of leaves. I've got bags all over the yard, and all of this was cleaned up last week, and this week it's all now covered in leaves again. So it's a never-ending problem at this time of year. But anyway, so I still will be restoring. Just I've got to devote time each day to get into the garden and cut things back. So once I've done the garden areas, it's all through up into here. Once I've done the garden areas, I've then got to get down into the bushland areas, which are further down the property. Down, a bit hard to see from here. I'll move to another part where I can get a better view. Right, just walking down through the property. I do actually have paths through the garden, but they're all covered with leaves and so on. These have all got to be cleaned up. So a lot of leaf matter on the garden and on the paths. So I'll try and walk down here without falling over. There are a number of stairs to go down because this is a sloping garden. So all this has got to be cleaned up. All overgrown. unfortunately, but it doesn't take too much to cut some of it back. Other bits are a bit problematic. There is actually a path through there, it's got to be cleaned up. Just keep going down and try not to fall down. Really hard to look at the camera viewfinder and where I'm putting my feet. Okay, still moving down. I have a number of large rock outcrops. At least they're things that don't burn, but they gather up leaf litter and sticks all over them. So all of this, from about this level of the property back, is natural bushland. This is all on my property here. Once again, the leaf litter has got to be removed and the sticks have got to be removed, so it's everywhere. Let's get over here. Once again, more sticks, leaves. As I say, all has to be cleaned out before the fire season. Pardon me. I go all the way down there to there's a creek at the bottom, a very small creek. The area that I have to clean basically extends down to the little clearing there. I don't clear any further than that. The land falls away beyond that. There's a bit of a drop off. It's actually a sort of a small, I'll call it a cliff for want of a better word. Drops down about 20 feet. So that's all got to be cleaned. But what I do with this is mainly just clean out the rubbish on the ground. If I leave that there and a fire comes through, that provides so much fuel for the fire that it makes it difficult to stop, because then it'll rage up through the property. So all of the rubbish on the ground is removed, anything that's dead is removed, and just lessens the impact of a fire coming through. Now I have had a fire through here. It came through and basically burnt this whole valley out about 23 years ago. Whilst the fire actually destroyed about 7 houses about 200 metres away from here, we were lucky to survive. It basically burnt all this area out and came up a little bit into the established gardens, not much. And hopefully the reason for that is the way we prepared the property. We cleaned all the, as I say, all the rubbish out from underneath, and it just lessened the impact of the fire. Didn't stop it, but it lessened the impact. So what I do with this area down here, I combine the efforts with my neighbours, and what we do, we all get together and we clean all of this litter out, not only along my property but the properties on either side. So that's something we're organising in the next couple of months. We'll probably get about half a dozen people and go through and just remove all this loose litter. So that's yet to be done. At least I don't have to do all of it on my own, so other people will help. But I certainly have to get into my own established gardens and clean that out, and hopefully be able to get down here and do some of this as well. So that's what I'll be doing over the next few months. Not something you can do in a hurry. It just means that every day you've got to come out here and start moving things because of the amount of area that's got to be covered. Just thought I'd show this area here. All of these plants, succulent plants of course. I'm pretty sure they're called agave or something like that. And something that's very unusual is to have these flower. They don't flower very often, once again because of the amount of rain we've had. The things have actually started to flower, as I say, unusual. Certainly doesn't happen every year, and happens, in fact this is about the first time I've seen this much growth on this patch here. It's certainly increased in size, and as I say, the flowers have come on, which is, as I say, quite unusual. But also quite spectacular when they do. Probably can't see that, but there are bees actually going in and out of the small flowers. More leaf litter, more leaf litter. Anyway, that's enough. It's making me depressed, there's so much to do.